Good evening, folks, and welcome to episode 2 of Inbound Shots. It is actually a late night episode, recording just after 10 o'clock at night on Wednesday, the 20th of December, in the lead up to Christmas. My name's Craig Bailey, and I'm here with
Moby from Inbound Buzz.
And Ian Jacob from Search and Be Found.
So if it feels like a long time between drinks, that's because it is. The last time we did this was the last year when we came back from Inbound. So it was like 9 months ago or so. So you guys have been holding out. We're finally back with Inbound Shots number 2, our second crossover episode of HubShots, of course, and Inbound Buzz.
All right, so what are we going to chat about tonight? We've got 3 topics, really. And you actually mentioned, we had dinner before the show. It was a long dinner, can you tell me?
Yeah, I'm really struggling.
We had some topics we're going to chat about. And the first one is, you raised this topic of after the ebook. So do you want to explain what that concept is? And then we're just going to talk about some of the ideas that we had.
It's really interesting. So for not every industry, but for some industries, they're getting a lot of ebook fatigue. So the question I like to pose to a lot of people is, when's the last time you actually consumed an ebook? Like you downloaded it and you read it through and you actually learned something. So whether or not it works or not, I think let us talk about that in a second. But I think for a lot of industries, there is a lot of fatigue when it comes to ebook. So we start talking about what comes after the ebook. So I might as well kick off with one of the ideas.
Yeah.
One of the ideas is what I'm calling is the deconstructed ebook. By no means is it an invention. When you hear me talking about it, you'll know that everyone's kind of been doing this, but it's a nice approach to look at it. So, of course, when you get deconstructed anything, when you go to a cafe, you get a deconstructed, like a crepe. It's just baristas or a cafe owner's lazy way of just smashing everything on a plate, right, and unpacking it. So that's what I'm sort of saying when it comes to ebooks. So one of the things we want to try with some of our clients next year, as opposed to locking up an ebook that is getting declining click-through rates in certain industries at the moment, is actually unpacking it. Because packed into an ebook, it is getting zero SEO juice. That landing page for that ebook is not going to rank. The guys from marketing school, Eric Su, Neil Patel, they do a lot of this. They've been doing it for a long time. Some people might call it pillar content, but the idea is take your ebook, unpack it, expand that on a page. It's going to be a long page, and then there's a couple of things you need to keep in mind. So, of course, the content has to be good. I think that goes without saying. Having a way to navigate to the top quite easily, and then using the pages or the sections that you would have in your ebook, using that as anchor links, almost like a table of contents, so you can kind of jump around. Okay, let me ask you, what's the biggest problem with that? What do you think is the problem with that, Craig, now that we're doing it this way?
Well, so let's go back. What's the goal of the page? Because before the ebook, the goal was to get an email address or a contact in the database. So now we're saying, well, do we still have that? It's ungated. And we're chatting about ideas where you can still actually have offers on that page. And so it's a balance between those benefits, isn't it? You're actually unlocking SEO benefit in some ways, and also shareability. It's very rare that people on social would share a landing page to an ebook, unless it was fantastic, in which case they might say, get this ebook. Although quite often they share the thank you page, which kind of defeats the purpose. But you're getting some benefits. But then we were looking at, well, how do you actually make sure you don't lose the original goal of the landing page, which was to gate it and get contacts? And that's kind of some of the things that we're chatting about. And you had some ideas as well.
Yes, I'll kick one idea off, then I want to hear what you guys think. But one idea could be simply saying, a real simple one, get a PDF version of this page. It's really not that hard. There are a bunch of plugins. Chances are, and I actually would recommend, if you have ebooks that are getting dated, that aren't getting those conversion rates, is trying this idea, like not just shelving it. Even if you have an ebook or an offer, or lead magnet, whatever you want to call it, you haven't been using, unpack it, give it another life. You've already done the hard yards anyway. It's literally paying someone just to unpack that for you. But offer someone a PDF version of that and say, look, if you're too busy to read this, read it later, get a PDF version. So you're still then kind of capturing something. But then we had some other ideas too on how to get that email.
Well, just on that, you've had experience where this whole idea of using a PDF version of a page is actually quite effective.
Yeah, it is. So I think that's something you can try. We've spoken about this before, is just giving people that option. I think they, for some reason, think there's greater value in having the PDF. So offer it. And again, our motto is test and see what works, because that's what's going to make the difference. I
think that's right. And you mentioned at the start this whole idea of it depends on the industry. So don't take this as a rule across all industries. We are seeing ebook fatigue in some, and especially in marketing circles, which we are definitely part of.
Yeah.
And if you're in marketing, downloading marketing ebooks, you're probably doing that less. But in other industries, it's still very relevant, and you can still. And we certainly some industries where it still works phenomenally well. And then others where we're seeing the same.
Yeah, and you raised that point because I was like, I had my marketing industry blinders on. I'm like, it's not working. I ask my own clients, but I ask them, how many marketing ebooks have you downloaded, and read? And they said no, but then you raise a good point. I think that point is around, is that market saturated?
And that's why you're saying test and measure.
Correct.
Test in each industry, yeah.
So I think another thing, guys, is that think about other things that you can offer. So things like quizzes that actually take people through a process of understanding more about themselves, more about their marketing, more about what's going on. I think that's not something else we could try.
You said before, people love to learn about themselves. So a quiz, what kind of X are you? People want to know about themselves.
Yeah, it's funny. There's a cycle. I don't know if it's like hedonic. I don't know what the word is for it. It escapes me right now. But we're actually really selfish creatures. Humans, we're not that hard to figure out. People want to know, but they want to learn about themselves under the guise of, learning about a particular area. So I think that's a good idea when you think about it, because like you're taking the idea of a quiz, which on its own is a good top of funnel tool. I'd really sort of struggle to see examples where quizzes are a great bottom of funnel tool, but they're definitely a great top of funnel tool. But then using that as almost like a content upgrade on that content piece. So like starting to use ideas together. Yeah. I think it's a good way to look at it.
That's right. And so what we're really talking about is different formats and different things you can engage with or interact with. So this idea of building interaction, we've seen similar to quizzes, there's calculators that you have on sites. And then, of course, there's the old classics like HubSpot have with their marketing grader, having a tool that you actually get some benefit or analysis out of, and you have to put in your email address to get back that result.
You might find it might actually cost the same or even less. Like, by the time you pay for a good writer, do research, not to mention all the man hours and design, it will take you a couple of $1,000s to create a good ebook. Like at experience, it's going to take you that. It's going to take you a bit of coin. Unless you do the entire thing yourself and you use...
Yeah, I think the important thing, though, is it comes back... And this is why ebooks did used to be quite effective, because they were generally thought out well. They took extra effort to produce. So before you invested all that money on writing an ebook, whereas you could have just, done a blog post, wasn't as expensive. An ebook was more expensive. So people thought about it, what pain point or what question is it providing answers for. We don't just jump into calculators and tools and that because they're cheap, but because they are a bit more expensive, they make us think more about the problem that we're trying to solve for our audience. And perhaps that is part of the reason why they can be more effective.
Absolutely.
All right, on from ebook fatigue. The second topic we're going to chat about tonight was this concept. This is going back more to a macro kind of thing. Don't blindly follow industry leaders. And this is interesting to talk about because in marketing, we have lots of, HubSpot, of course, is a dominant player in the marketing industry. And we hear things from HubSpot. We also hear it from some of the other big sites. We won't list them all because we just be criticizing the whole industry. But the point of this is, do we blindly follow what we're told? And part of the reason that we're going to push back and say no is because it is industry specific. So it's almost like an industry leader or a HubSpot, not that they do say this, but they could say, ebooks, they're no longer effective. Choose something else. But we know from experience that it's actually case by case. They're not working in some, but in others they're working really well. It's this idea of not following leaders. Did you have any comments on that?
Yeah, so I'm not going to talk about it in depth now because we talked about it in depth in InboundShots episode number 1, which I'm sure we'll link to in the show notes somewhere. But how, just real quickly, outbound is not dead, guys. Like it is not dead. Like we've talked about to death, so I'm not going to mention it here. But when it's done strategically and you know who you're after, it's not going to die.
Just explain what outbound is, as if you...
Yeah. So outbound, it's the act of, it's so funny. A modern marketer would be like, well, what is outbound? Calling, like cold calling, picking up the phone, some forms of interruptive marketing, the definition of inbound is changing, like the definition of SEO has not changed, but more, it encompasses a lot more things. So like inbound before didn't include, and then to your point, Craig, like you can't just follow the trend of, this is what inbound is and that's what we're going to do. Because if you did 2-3 years ago, you wouldn't have done any paid advertising. And now you can't not survive without a paid component of your strategy for most industries.
In relation to outbound and then paid advertising, that's an excellent example because and not only industry leaders in terms of HubSpot and other companies, but even other partner agencies and many agencies, they're still not doing paid advertising because they don't think it's actually effective. It's because they haven't tested it. Yeah. And in some industries, it may not work. So they might have tested and it didn't work. That's okay. But to blindly just follow HubSpot's lead a couple of years ago and say, no, we're not going to do pay, that would have been a big mistake. And so the point of this segment, I guess, in the show is just to chat about how easy it is to fall into that trap of just following this kind of conventional wisdom in the marketing space.
It's really, like, even for us, like, it's really easy to get intimidated and like, oh, everyone's doing it. We've got to be doing it. You know, like, we'll talk about, you know, video as an example later, but everyone's doing it, so we must be doing it. But you're really good at this, Craig. Like, the litmus test is like, what are we trying to achieve? And we spoke a little bit earlier about, is that going to work with our persona? Like, it's not about just doing inbound because inbound's working, or because Gary Vaynerchuk or someone is saying you got to do this and you got to hustle in this content. It's got very little to do that, because chances are everyone's consuming the same sort of stuff. So the concept of lumpy mail, the idea of sending packages to a select group of your audience, if you're in the B2B world, I guess, with lumpy mail. So the idea that there's something there, a sample, that's going to work. Who's not going to open that now? We spoke about calls. Like, there's so many things you could be trying, and this might be the most cliche, clickbaity thing I'm going to say all night. But forget about best practice and think about test practice.
Nice.
I feel cliche even saying it, but like, if there's something that will make you remember, best practice doesn't apply for everyone. Often it's given by people who have done a plethora of other things. So test practice. Test when it comes to opinions, and opinions start clashing. Say, you know what? You could be right. I could be right. Let's be.
So you're actually saying general best practice is not so good, but specific best practice based on test practice is actually okay.
Yeah.
Because you've informed the actual tactics or strategy. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's it. That's all I've got to add for that one.
All right.
I'm going to say, let's talk about 80-20. We've got to understand, test and see what works in your industry, and master one thing that is actually working before you go on to try other things. I think that's a really key aspect, because in marketing today, you could actually be doing 100 things. We all know, like, you could be on every social media, but really it might not be the wise thing to do. It might actually be better off focusing on one, testing it, making it work, or maybe ditching it because it's not working before you start something else.
So you're basically saying follow based on test results, not follow based on whatever flavour of the month.
Exactly.
I totally agree. I'll give you a few examples of here's things that jumping towards 2018, right?
Yeah.
So Instagram for B2B. We're getting great results with it, with a few clients, not with all. In fact, Instagram's not working at all for some clients.
Yeah.
So if we just went on one or two test cases, we're like, Instagram's hopeless. But we know it's working really well for some clients. So we're going to actually push really hard on Instagram B2B. None of the other agencies that we chat with, they're all like, no, Instagram's just B2C. And I think in the industry generally, Instagram is just a B2C play. That's the conventional wisdom.
Okay.
But you can actually be really effective with it. And so test and measure. That's one of them. I'll tell you another one that I'm getting back into. I don't know if you're trying this. Have you tried Twitter ads lately?
I haven't. I gave it a go a little while ago.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I tried it a while ago.
Didn't work.
Didn't work. Try it again. Twitter is actually really effective. Here's another thing to think. How do you get most of your information? You know, when you find great articles to read in marketing or great case studies or things like that, how do you actually find most of them?
Twitter or Feedly.
Twitter is a big...
Yes.
I was actually thinking through my own behaviours. Not that that's reflective of, say, our audience, but for me, I actually get a lot of the best content I get from Twitter. Right. And I think, I get it from Twitter. Why aren't I using Twitter more? You know, so test and measure again. And I think this is the thing. Whereas if you're conventional wisdom in the industry,
Twitter's dying.
It's not Twitter. Yeah. So that's interesting, isn't it?
All right. On to number 3, Craig.
So speaking of not following the industry leaders, let's chat about video. And this is going to be slightly controversial.
Yeah.
Because the conventional wisdom would be that video is where you should be putting so much focus, and your strategy should all be a video strategy. Now, I know it kind of is in some ways for you. Interested in your thoughts, because I'm actually going to push back and say it's not for me, and I think you're a bit in the middle. So you're going to get the range of views here. And what's interesting is that none of them are right or wrong, but they're actually horses for courses, as we would say. So do you want to kick off on what your plans are?
Yeah, so this was really interesting. So, like, it's amazing how much we, like, clashed on this initially. Because, like, for me, like, I want to double down on video. Like, I think, and the reason why I wanted to leave this example for now, because we're talking about video, but I guess a bit of a conduit to one of the other things we spoke about, what comes after the ebook. I noticed a really good example by HubSpot where they actually didn't do an ebook. See, with HubSpot, they can almost try everything, right? But they didn't do an ebook. I really like the strategy of they gated video. So it was about SEO, the what you need to know about SEO in 2018, whatever it was, it's irrelevant. But then it will link to it in the show notes as well in some capacity. But then it was a series of 6 questions. And these 6 questions, the videos varied from anywhere from 2.5 minutes to about 6 minutes, right? And I thought that was perfect because like no one, you do a sample survey, it'll be a lottery, you'll get excited if you find someone who reads an ebook. But with this particular offer, I think it resonates. I think you can offer snippets of that video. And I like anything you can transpose in other mediums. You can take snippets of that video, use it in your Facebook ads as the hook, then get people there and say, look, if you're interested in one of these 6 questions and answers. And it was like, how do I find out if I'm listed on Google? How do I find out if I have duplicate content? How do I find out when I'm ranking for keywords? How do I find out what people are searching for? Like questions that most of us, at least 2 or 3 resonate in 2 or 3 different ones. So I thought that's great. And going into 2018, I love the idea of snackable content. It's not a new concept, but I think it's a concept that with waning attention spans and people, like definitely our persona, like marketers, you got to think about snackable content. So I think video is ideal for that. So I'm going to be doubling down on video. But
can I just do you want to just explain what snackable content is for a few people who may not be familiar with the term?
Yes. So snackable content, the idea that you can consume content very, very quickly, where you can, the start to the end, you can consume very quickly. And snackable content, I'd hazard a guess that it came out of the idea that, you're at lunch or you're on your mobile phone, you're on the train, and you're just consuming content. You're just binging content, like you're Netflixing on content, and you can pick up these nuggets really, really quickly. So
So I think I would say Google calls that micro moments. So people are having these micro moments all through the day, wherever they are, and you're basically feeding them in those micro moments with snackable content.
Yeah, one question, one answer. We spoke about this earlier, the top 10 that you guys do on your podcast, which gets a lot of good feedback. That itself, an example could be, you could have something on that. Like whether or not you take the episode and you cut it up into 2 different formats, or you use that top 10, so the top 10 creative ideas, you take an idea that's almost impossible to sell and you come up with 10 ideas. That's great. That itself could be snackable content. It's almost like a BuzzFeed type article, for what you guys do. But I want to kick it too, because you had a very different...
Great idea,
you pay me for it once you get sponsorship dollars. But I want to kick it to both of you guys, but firstly yourself, Craig, because you had a very different view that I had on this.
Okay, so my view on video is, I don't like video.
Because you've got a radio face.
And you said, I'm not buying it. I think we all have radio faces. I think that's been established. But anyway.
Well, I don't like creating video, so this medium is uncomfortable for me. But it's less than that. It's more, and I do have a bias because I don't consume much video. I mean, I do watch YouTube a bit. But whenever I want to find an answer to a question, I personally like to read it. And so whenever I get a result and it's got a video, I skip that. And a good example is, say, the Moz Whiteboard Friday.
Yeah.
So great content, there'll be a video there. I never watch the video. I read the transcript. That's just my personal consumption style. What's interesting about video, though, that you alerted me to, is that I actually put more weight in the Whiteboard Fridays because it has a video. And so it's almost like the video is a confidence indicator to me, even though I never watch it. I actually read the actual text and images underneath. So anyway, then putting those 2 together, I'm like, you were saying, well, play to your strengths, but also play to what your passion is. Because if I keep hearing the industry, and we interviewed Brian Halligan on the show, and he was saying, got to be in video. And so I'm aware that really smart people that have done the analysis are saying video. And I know I don't want to do it. So I've got this kind of conflict. What I've decided is I'm actually going to play to my strengths, and I'm going to do the stuff that I do like doing because it'll be consistent. I'll be more passionate about it, and we'll provide more value. But the other thing is, because I have my own bias that I know I don't like watching video, I'm going to assume that there are some other people like me as well. And so while the rest of the world goes off generating all that video, maybe I'll be in the smaller segment now that is still providing that content for the people who do like it in that format. I am, of course, then weighing that up with the fact that what I said before, Moz has more credibility because it has video as an example. So I'm still kind of conflicted, but I'm pushing back on what the industry is telling me that I should be doing. I may be wrong. I quite often am. So I might come back and look at this episode a couple of years and go, what on earth was I thinking? But that's kind of where I'm actually pushing back against the video. I think it's getting too many people just jumping on board. And the other thing about video, sorry to just hold the microphone at this point, but the other thing about video is it's got to the point where people are just producing rubbish They walk around with a video. They think, I've got to do more video. I'll take it.
I really hate that.
It's almost like, I've got an opinion about something that has popped into my head. Well, the world better be, that's worthy for the world to see. And it's just wasting time. And so you're getting all this noise. And perhaps the video, that strategy, if there is one, is really, it's got to be around being very targeted and providing quality for a specific set of questions or a specific audience, rather than just churning out this junk that social seems to be pushing. When you said snacking, the thing that when I think of snacking is mindless eating. And I guess I'm for mindful eating. I'm for mindfulness and quality content that I consume and solves a problem. Maybe that's just me, and I realize that I've got my own personal biases about that. That's kind of where I sit. Ian, what do you think? You're probably more in the middle between us. You're a bit more balanced than me.
Look, I think it's important. And I think I look at the behavior of my kids, and they're on YouTube every day. So they are consuming content, be it entertainment, be it something educational, be it toy reviews that they're looking at. And it's really fascinating to see their pattern of behavior. And I think, like we all sit on this journey, is that understanding, who we're talking to, where is it going, and how we're communicating with our audience. Because, as we've met people that listen to the podcast, some people have actually told us, I wish you guys would talk more about what you guys are interested in, more about your businesses, more about some of the journey, as opposed to being always talking about marketing or HubSpot or things that we're so focused on delivering value about. And so I think that's what we've got to understand, like on this journey, what are we trying to do and how we're adding value to those people and what do they want to hear, because we get very little feedback. And so I think it is interesting. And I'm in that camp where I want to do more of it, but I'm probably a bit unsure about it. And I just probably need to pull the plug and just do it.
Just do it.
You're speaking about like us and reflecting on yourself. I don't think it can be lost, the point around play to your strength. Like, unless your strength is completely different to what your persona is. Like, so for example, if you're running nursing homes and I don't know, like I'm sure they consume the same content we do, but I don't know, for whatever reason, like, give a stupid example, they don't listen to podcasts, then maybe don't do a podcast, right? But if that's the way you're learning and whatever, use that as your strength. So Craig, like if you were to try to master video, it would take you 10 times longer than someone who that comes naturally to. If your strength is writing or whatever, it's going to take, someone else who's not a very good writer 10 times longer. And it might not be worth it. So like, I think the advice that I give to myself first and foremost and to everyone else, don't be pressured by the flavor of the month. I think you raised a really good point, Ian, Craig, both of you guys actually, don't be pressured by what the flavor is of the month. Like if that's your strength, double down. Like you might double down on inbound content, Craig, but it's going to be 10 times better than someone else because it comes more naturally and easier to you.
Yeah,
and then you transpose it to video.
And don't forget, you can get someone like Moby to do your videos.
Yeah, that's right.
So, you just got to find the people that can do
I do have a music video. I can do videos. So, yeah, but writing, I might not want to write.
We'll put that video of you for Inbound as a link in the show notes as well.
But yeah, so I think one of the things we were talking about earlier is how do we better repurpose content, and video is a part of that mix, right? So if we don't want to be in front of the camera, can we actually do it in a different way? But we don't have to be in front of the camera. So we could actually use our voices overlaid with a presentation of some sort, right? Which enforces what we're talking about. Doesn't actually have our faces on it. So
excellent point.
That's another way to think about it. It's not about us always talking to the camera or us filming ourselves walking around.
Look, as long as it's inbound marketing and helping someone make an informed purchasing decision, who cares how it's delivered?
Yeah.
So
a quick recap of the show. We basically started talking about after the ebook, this idea of ebook fatigue and some ideas. And we talked about formats there as well as other mechanisms. Don't follow industry leaders, be informed by them, but don't follow them blindly. And then, a look at video at the end.
So one thing I need to say as a bit of an insight, you mentioned this, Craig, and I'm like, I have to say this. I think the age of like that unless you're Gary Vaynerchuk or Ellen, don't get a smartphone, please. Like, out of respect for yourself, we care, we do this because we care, we're passionate about what we do. Unless you're Ellen or Gary Vaynerchuk, do not get a camera there. And today I'm going to talk about how my day, and it was so great. And like I've heard influencers say, I give you permission to put yourself on video. Like, no one needs to give you permission. Like that is, so I think the standard is going up. Well, 12 months ago, you could do that raw style. because people weren't doing it. You also have to realize that the standard is going up. So, for God's sakes, make them a little bit more professional.
I think that's an important distinction, because actually when I say I'm pushing back on video, it is certain types of video that I'm pushing back on. I'm not pushing back. So screencasts, and you were mentioning this format before. I think that's still a very worthwhile it is part of content repurposing. I think it's a very good way. But I think it's that mindless video that hasn't had thought put into it, which is what I'm pushing back on. And while that might sound obvious to push back on, it's actually what I think a lot of the industry is saying you should be doing. And I think that's right. I have seen those same kind of comments. I give you permission, just get out there, just do it. It's kind of like saying to people, just create a blog, just start putting out random thoughts. Like, sure, do it, but don't assume that that's a strategy that you should be doing to gain an audience.
Don't do it to be brave. That's not the point, to be brave.
Do it to practice maybe, but not in the mindset of it being a strategy. Should we leave it there?
That's all I'll say on that. Yep.
Well, thank you for joining us.
We'll see another 8 months. No, I'm kidding. We'll do this more often. Let us know what you think. Please give us your feedback. And thank you from me. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Hey there. Thanks for listening to this episode of HubShots. For show notes and the latest HubSpot news and tips, please visit us at HubShots.com.